Welcome back to the ATST show, everyone. As always, I am your host, Aiden Davis, and this is going to be my second, if I believe I'm doing the math correctly, this is going to be my second long-form Star Wars discussion on the channel. So with that being said, let's go ahead and talk a lot of Star Wars and dive on in. Alrighty, everybody, this is my second ever Star Wars long-form discussion here on Aiden Talks Star Wars Topics. Now, for today's discussion, I'm going to be splitting it up into three parts. The first part is going to be a book review. I recently just got done with Darth Plagueis by James Luceno. So I'm going to basically do a non-spoiler review of that and go kind of in depth on some important story beats that are part of that story. Secondly, I'm going to talk a lot more about the High Republic and not what I've already talked about, like the presence of the dark side during that time period, but I'm going to be diving more into what the Jedi are acting like during this time period and things of that nature. So the second part of the discussion is going to be about the High Republic. And the third part of the discussion is going to be about the Bad Batch, because hopefully that's going to be coming up very soon into this brand new year of 2021. So, with all of that laid out, let's go ahead and get started. So, Darth Plagueis is a novel, of course, written by James Luceno, and it was released in 2011, so it's part of the Legends continuity, but in my personal opinion, I don't see any reason as to why a lot of it can't be brought back into the canon continuity. There are a lot of cool story beats throughout the book, both about Plagueis and, of course, Palpatine, because Palpatine is the apprentice of Plagueis. And actually, it's really cool to learn about Plagueis' master, Darth Tenebris, and kind of the Sith that have been carrying on the rule of two since the death of Darth Bane. So basically, to give you some background, the Sith have kind of been hidden for about 1,000 years since Darth Bane established the rule of two. And so basically, Plagueis and his master Tenebris are the two true remaining Sith in the galaxy who are following the rule of two. Needless to say, as the rule of two goes, you have the master to pass on knowledge to the apprentice, and then the role of the apprentice is to learn that knowledge and then kill the master. And of course, this does happen. Small spoiler, Plagueis does end up killing his master, Tenebris, but he promises his master and thanks his master for all of his teachings and whatnot. And he promises that the revenge of the Sith will be fully realized, but through him, through Plagueis. And after this point in time, Plagueis grows this mindset that he can basically break away from the rule of two because he feels as if it is no longer necessary. When he wants to rule the galaxy, he really wants more of a partner rather than an apprentice. So he wants someone that's his equal. And some time fast forward. So basically, to do a bit of backtracking, Darth Tenebris dies, I want to say about 30 to 40 years before the Phantom Menace, which happens in 32 BBY. BBY stands for Before the Battle of Yavin, for those of you that are curious. So there's this 30-year time period of Plagueis establishing his plan, the role to see the fully realized Revenge of the Sith happen. And Plagueis basically has this second personality known as Higo Damask. And I don't know if y'all know, but Darth Plagueis is actually immune and that is the species that's in charge of the intergalactic banking clan. So basically, all of the flow of credits through the galaxy are monitored and controlled by the intergalactic banking clan. And Plagueis actually grew up in a high-standing family, so he's pretty wealthy, and he has this company called Damask Holdings, and basically he uses that front to basically get many things done in order to move along the Revenge of the Sith. And further down the line, because of course the Revenge of the Sith, Plagueis' plan involves politics, of course, because it's very well known that in the political system of Star Wars, at least the Republic, there's a lot of opportunity to exploit corruption and whatnot, and Plagueis fully uses that at his discretion. And on the planet of Naboo, he meets Palpatine, who's very young at this point. He's actually a teenager at this point in time, and he figures out over time that Palpatine is very strong in the Force. And his family knew this. His mom and dad and siblings knew about this. Palpatine's family did. And they really hated him for it. They thought he was a freak of nature. His dad would refuse to call him his son. And they just treated him very poorly. And Plagueis used this to his advantage, basically showing a strong relationship with Palpatine. And of course, Plagueis eventually finds out, like I said previously, that he's very strong in the Force. And Palpatine is turned to the dark side by Plagueis. His full turn basically happens in this scene in the book where his family is basically trying to exile him and keep him away from Higo Damask, Darth Plagueis. And Palpatine just uses the Force and kills his mom, his dad, and his siblings, his younger siblings. So, and a couple of guards that were on the ship as well. So that's really Palpatine's turn to the dark side, and it's really interesting to see. It kind of reinforces the point that Palpatine is one of, or if not the most evil person inside of the Star Wars galaxy. So that's really cool for the Plagueis novel. And of course, this is slightly a spoiler, but it's kind of to be expected. Since Palpatine is the person that he is, he doesn't want to share power, and this is personified basically in a in between the scenes moment that happens during the Phantom Menace. Yes, this book does take place many years before the Phantom Menace, and it also takes place during the Phantom Menace, which is really cool. We get to see a lot of cool scenes with the characters of the book interacting with characters from the film, which is really cool to see and actually expands the story in a really brilliant way. But like I said previously, Palpatine is the sort of dude that doesn't want to share power, and Plagueis is under the impression that, the Revenge of the Sith is going to be fully realized. Nothing can stop them. They're going to be the two most powerful beings in the galaxy. And basically, Palpatine attacks him when he's in a vulnerable state. Plagueis got really drunk on some really expensive wine in his apartment on Coruscant. And Palpatine basically takes this opportunity to betray his master. And he basically, to sum up, he gives this whole monologue about how Plagueis is really foolish for not seeing his plan up to the end and kind of just stopping in his tracks. And we kind of figure out that the title of Darth Plagueis the Wise is both a compliment and an insult. Now, of course, it's a compliment because Palpatine was calling his master very wise with the plan that he had devised to fully realize the Revenge of the Sith. But the insult part of that is basically Palpatine is trying to tell Plagueis that, you thought you were all powerful and all knowing, and you thought nothing could ever stop you and stuff like that. Well, guess what? I can. So, so much for being wise, because now you can't even save yourself. And to kind of delve back into other parts of the book, Plagueis is very interested with the midichlorians. He does a lot of experimentation, basically trying to will the midichlorians to extend his life. He can even reanimate dead beings using midichlorians in their body, which is really interesting to see. Even though midichlorians are highly controversial, I think this book does a really good job of making them very interesting to learn about. So Palpatine basically kills Plagueis, who they were supposed to be partners. Palpatine was going to make Plagueis the co-chancellor of the Republic. That was the original plan. And they sowed all of these seeds of dissent in the big corporations, of course, like the Trade Federation. The whole plan to blockade Naboo was actually to get sentiment for Palpatine in his run for the office of Chancellor, and it did work. And he also made it look like Chancellor Valorum was corrupt by feeding credits that looked like they came from unsavory methods into his family's shipping company. So that happened. Another cool part is Palpatine sees that Newt Gunray is someone that can really be taken advantage of, and of course he is part of the Trade Federation. So Palpatine and Plagueis come up with this plan to basically assassinate the entire ruling board of the Trade Federation, which basically leaves Newt Gunray the next in line to be the leader of the Trade Federation. And of course, that does succeed. Newt Gunray becomes the new leader of the Trade Federation. And the blockade of Naboo happens. And throughout this whole time period, even before this, Jedi Master Sifo Dyas had always been kind of contemplating the possibility of a civil war was possible. And Plagueis was kind of sowing these ideas of building an army for the Republic if a conflict were ever to happen. But here's the catch, right? Plagueis is all like, yeah, I really hope that the army isn't needed, but it would be really good to have if anything were to happen. And I can get you an army of 1 million strong in 10 years. And of course, this is during or a little bit before the Phantom Menace. So it's 32 BBY. Goes right up to 22 BBY, which is the start of the Clone Wars. Anyway, getting back to the point, Plagueis basically sows these seeds of the Republic needs a military, and he gets Sifo Dyas not to even tell the Jedi High Council and the Chancellor because Sifo Dyas isn't really confident that the council would believe him or the chancellor would believe him. And Plagueis is like, hey, it's better if we just go ahead and get the army ready. I have partners at Camino that can do a whole clone army. And I have another corporation, Rothana Heavy Engineering, that'll provide all the armaments, all the weapons, all the vehicles for this army of the Republic. And guess what? I'll fund the whole thing too. Take the money from accounts that can never be traced back to me or you. And Sifo-Dyas is all right. I'll go to the Kaminoans and request an army to be built. And of course, that does happen. Not right away, though, because, of course, uh, in order to have a clone army, you need a template. And the whole story, the whole legend story of that actually takes place during the Legends game Star Wars Bounty Hunter, which, of course, follows Jango Fett. I have never played the game, but I hear that it's really fun, and I hope to get my hands on it one day. And actually, kind of getting off topic, but another cool thing about this book is that it pulls all from different parts of the Legends continuity. Like there are references to a faction in the Star Wars Bounty Hunter game. There's references to the Hutts. There's references to other Sith Lords like Darth Nihilus and Darth Sion from Knights of the Old Republic 2. So this is a really, really well thought out book, and it has a really, really well thought out timeline. So I know that kind of got a little jumbled in places, but basically that's my review of the Plagueis novel. And it's a really great book. I highly, highly suggest you all go read it. I know I did touch on some things, so I'll probably throw in a spoiler warning before this part of the video, basically warning that I'll go into some spoilers about the book. But moving right along, let's go ahead and talk about the High Republic. Now, I'm in the middle of reading The Light of the Jedi, and so far I am really, really enjoying it. I'm not going to say anything about it because I don't want to spoil anything because it's a brand new book, and I want all of you to go out and experience it for yourselves. But anyway, something that's really interesting about the book is basically seeing the Jedi Order and how it acts during this time period of basically peace in the Republic. And I think, when you think about a Jedi in your head, most of us probably our mind goes to the Jedi during Clone Wars and then the time of the original trilogy and even the time of the sequel trilogy. But I think the High Republic is really, really showing and really, really illuminating the line from Obi-Wan in A New Hope, where he's like, for over 1,000 generations, the Jedi were guardians of peace and justice throughout the galaxy. And I think this new initiative by Lucasfilm, The High Republic, so far has been doing a really good job kind of bringing that quote to life. And it's interesting to see because there are even Jedi that are similar to some we already know, like they have certain quirks that relate directly to Jedi we know from future eras of the Star Wars story. And that's really cool to see because while at this point in time, the Jedi are focused on being peacekeepers of the galaxy and they aren't all entangled, with the Republic Senate and answering directly to the Chancellor, which of course eventually leads to their downfall because they just got so enraptured and so caught up in the corruption of the Republic that they couldn't really see the dark side emerge. Like the dark side was clouding everything during the Clone Wars. Even Yoda couldn't see through that, and he was the Grand Master of the entire Order. And he's Yoda's speaking of Yoda's supposed to show up in this era, so that'll be cool to see. But yeah, I think the High Republic era is different than the Old Republic era from Legends because even in that time period, similar to the time period of the prequels and the originals, the Jedi are at war too. But the only difference is that the Jedi and the Sith are like in a full out war, like with the Jedi Civil War and Knights of the Old Republic, um, the Sith Triumvirate in KOTOR 2, and then even the whole story of Star Wars The Old Republic, that MMO game. So really, this is the only real time where the Jedi haven't been in like a galactic-wide conflict that's taking all of their attention and forcing them to focus on that instead of just being peacekeepers. And it's really cool to see because at this point in time, the Jedi are a lot more spread out throughout the galaxy because, of course, which has been established previously, the Republic doesn't have a standing military. It just has basically the judicial forces to enforce the law, but it's not exactly like a military. It's, I guess, a good word for it would be like a militia. So like it's an organized group, but it's not, it doesn't have the power of like a full on, fully fledged out military. So it's cool to see like these Jedi outposts throughout the galaxy, especially in the Outer Rim. It makes sense because the Outer Rim is farthest from the core worlds and the Mid Rim and the colonies and all those sectors of the galaxy, and it's kind of been taken over, of course, by the crime families. Like the Hutts and the Black Sun and the Pikes and all that stuff. But it's really, really cool to see the Jedi of this era. And another cool thing is what's a minor thing, but I also like the different appearances of the lightsabers. We get to see a lot of new, interesting designs, and we actually get to see a couple of really cool new colors that have been added to the overall lightsaber color collection of the Star Wars story. So that's another really cool thing to see. Another cool thing about the Jedi Order during this time period is that we get to see uh, species that aren't really prominent during the time of the Clone Wars and the time of the Empire that are part of the Jedi Order. So we get to see a lot of more obscure species that are actually a part of the Jedi Order, which is really cool to see. And yeah, I find the Jedi of this time period to be very, very interesting because they basically personify what that line, like I said previously from Obi-Wan, basically saying the Jedi were guardians of peace and justice. So they're full-on peacekeepers. They just focus on the Force and use the Force and train and train and train and all that stuff. And it's really cool to see. So that's all I got about the Jedi during the High Republic without giving away too much in terms of spoilers. All right, so now moving right along to the Bad Batch. I am really, really excited for the show. Basically, if we're all being honest, this is just season 8 of the Clone Wars disguised as the Bad Batch. I'm really, really excited to join back up with the team. Hunter, Wrecker, Crosshair, Tech, and now Echo. Echo is now in his full Bad Batch gear, which is really cool to see. I hope there are some elements from the unfinished story arc on Kashyyyk that make up Echo's armor, because it was kind of a mixture of like an ARC trooper. It was basically what an ARC trooper would look like if they were on the Bad Batch, which is really cool to see. But in terms of the storyline, I definitely think the first part of the show, the first part of season 1, is basically going to be following the Bad Batch. I think a little bit before Order 66. I believe in the trailer, the sizzle reel that we got, there are some shots of Anaxes. Um, and it makes sense that that would be taking place before Order 66 because after the Battle of Anaxes, I don't know of any Jedi that would be stationed there, but hey, I could be wrong. It could be after Order 66. Who knows? But that's just my guess for that shot of Anaxes during the sizzle reel. And after, Order 66 comes down the pipeline, I think that's when we'll get the episodes where the Bad Batch is recalled to Kashyyyk, because, of course, there's that shot in the sizzle reel where there's all of those clones inside of a Kaminoan dome watching Palpatine's, declaration of the New Order, which is his speech during Episode 3, basically pronouncing that the Republic is no more, and now the Republic has become the First Galactic Empire. And I think after this speech, shortly after, or even before, I think Tarkin is going to assign the Bad Batch a mission. Who knows? Maybe it'll take him to Zygeria, because we see shots of Zygeria in the trailer. Or it could even be a mission to Braca, because Braca is seen in the trailer. And if you guys don't know, that is where Jedi Padawan Cal Kestis from Jedi Fallen Order went into hiding, the shipbreaking yards of Braca. That is where Cal Kestis is hiding. However, it's my belief that we might not see Cal because he can't reveal himself as a Force user until the events of Jedi Fallen Order, which take place 5 years after Revenge of the Sith and Order 66. And this show is taking place, right after Revenge of the Sith. But who knows? Maybe the Bad Batch will find him and basically keep their secret, because, you know, there's always been the question of, do the Bad Batch have an inhibitor chip inside of their heads, or do they not? Now, I've heard intriguing arguments on both sides as to why they would have one and why they wouldn't have one. In terms of the argument that they would have one, it's basically like, well, they might be different, but they're just another clone. So that's why they would have a chip, because they still need to be a part of all the protocols that are put inside of the clone's head, from childbirth. That's one argument I heard, saying that they do have an inhibitor chips. And the opposing argument that I've heard about the inhibitor chips is that they're genetic experiments. They're experiments. So why would the Kaminoans uh, even bother with putting inhibitor chips inside of them? Because as we see, the Bad Batch's personality is a lot different from regular clone troopers, regs, as the Bad Batch called them. So there's the argument that, like, the Kaminoans were like, well, there's no reason to put inhibitor chips in these guys because they don't respect authority. Like, even in season 7 of Clone Wars, we see that the Bad Batch don't fully adhere to what the Jedi believe in their commands, and they even don't want to be awarded medals for their heroic actions during the Battle of the Nexus. Like, their path is different, as basically paraphrasing what Hunter says to Echo in the last episode of that arc. So that's really cool to see. In terms of characters that we're getting in the show, of course, we're getting the Bad Batch. We're getting Admiral Tarkin, because he's not yet a Grand Moff, because that is not yet a position within the Empire. The Empire is in its infancy at this point in time. We're getting Fennec Shand, which is really cool. It'd be cool to flesh out her backstory and see how she became a really deadly assassin that worked for the several crime families of the galaxy. So that'll be cool to see. I hope, here are characters that I hope to see. I hope to see Gregor in the show. I hope to see Commander Wolf in the show. And of course, I hope that we see Commander Cody in the show, because throughout the Clone Wars show, Cody was a key important character. And we have not really gotten a resolution to his story yet, and I feel it would be a mistake not to include him in this show that is solely about clones during the early days of the Empire. Because as we saw in Revenge of the Sith, Cody, like most of his clone brothers, followed the protocol with no hesitation. Maybe Cody is the proto Death Trooper looking clone trooper that has a squad of what I think are covert ops clone troopers, which is an idea pulled from Legends, which it's always cool to see Legends ideas being pulled back into canon, readapted into canon, which is always cool to see. I think basically that squad that shows up in the sizzle reel is basically going to be the anti Bad Batch squad. So that'll be really cool to see them in action. I know those that one flamethrower trooper looks pretty cool, kind of similar to the ones that we got during the second battle of Geonosis arc, but a lot different because those flamethrowers are now most likely being targeted at clone traders, aka the Bad Batch. In terms of Force users showing up in the show, it's most likely that they will be devoted to the dark side of the Force. So I'm thinking possibly a Vader cameo. We're already getting a Palpatine cameo through his speech, which is really cool to see. And I'm not exactly sure if the timeline adds up. Sorry, that was just my phone. I'm not sure exactly if the timeline adds up, but we might even see the formation, well, not the direct formation of the Inquisitors, but we might see one in the background or something like that. Maybe even the Grand Inquisitor from Star Wars Rebels. So that would be really cool to see. Another hope that I have is that basically in the Bad Batch show, we visit some new planets. And I know this is a little confusing, but here's what I mean by new planets. This might be kind of cheating, but I hope, as we've kind of already seen, we're going to be revisiting planets after the formation of the Empire. And what I mean by new planets is that I hope we see a big transition from how this planet was during the Republic and now how it is during Galactic Empire, because I feel like that would be a really cool comparison to see, whether or not planets have embraced the Empire fully or have completely rejected it. I think that would be a really cool idea to explore because it would kind of help play into the fact of what the Bad Batch is thinking about this new order that has been established. Clearly, they don't stick with it forever. Hopefully not. I hope they can see that the Empire is definitely a very bad organization and that they basically try to separate themselves. And I hope they basically become one of the first groups that rebels against the Empire. I think this is more than likely to happen because of my previous point about the Bad Batch's personality being different than the regular clone troopers. So that's all I have for the Bad Batch. That's basically all I have for this discussion. I know it probably went a little shorter than I was expecting, but that's okay. I got in all the points that I wanted to. So, as always, I have been your host, Aiden Davis, and I'll see you on the next ATST show. Thanks for watching.